Year 9 War Poetry Critical Essay Common Errors. Now, in general, the essays were done really quite well. I was really quite impressed. But the main thing you all need to improve on is answering the question. The essay is not just an opportunity to tell the examiner everything you know about the text that you've studied. You'll be lucky to get a pass at that, especially at IGCSE. Instead, it's an opportunity for you to use your essay writing skills and analysis skills to essentially use your analysis to answer the question that is being asked. If you don't answer the question, you can't score very highly on it. So to do this, you need to really be using petal fully and properly, making sure that each paragraph has a point, has evidence in the form of a quote. It mentions a technique, so usually your evidence will be in the form of a technique. You then analyze the evidence that you've used to help you answer the point, and then finally you link it back. So for example, Wordsworth tells us that he wandered lonely as a cloud. This suggests that Wordsworth feels that he actually was a cloud himself. He literally became a cloud. Therefore, he embodies nature. He became nature and him became one. Therefore, that shows us how important nature is to Wordsworth. So your point would be that Wordsworth uses a simile when he says, and then the evidence, I wandered lonely as a cloud, which is a simile, so you're mentioning your technique, and then you analyze it, saying that by comparing himself to a cloud, he is feeling like he literally is nature. He is completely at one with nature. You can develop it and then say, it's interesting that, for example, he didn't use a metaphor. He's not saying he is a cloud. He's suggesting that he wandered lonely like a cloud, which means that he's not fully at one with nature. He's not fully the cloud himself, but he remains half human, half with nature, and that's really what he tells us. That's how close he is to nature. You then link him back to the question, saying this therefore tells us that whilst he felt very closely linked to nature, he wasn't completely nature himself, as the simile suggests. So it's using petal fully and properly. You must know about and talk about your poetic techniques. Every single one of you must absolutely, by year 9, know your year 10, know your poetic techniques inside out. You cannot enter IGCSE not knowing your poetic techniques. It's as simple as that. If you don't know them, there's numerous praises and screencasts in the Edmodo group that you can look at, and you must learn them. It's as simple as that. If you don't know them, you're never going to be able to talk about them, and therefore you're never going to do well at English. You also need to develop your analysis more in depth. This is really important and many people don't. Always think of, as I'll show you, your denotation, first of all your connotation, the first things that come into your head when you think about the image that you're analysing, and then your secondary connotation that really links it back to the question. But you have to really think on 2 or 3 different levels really deeply about what the quote that you've chosen to analyse all suggests. You've also got to offer your own personal opinion. This is absolutely essential. You cannot do well at IGCSE unless you give your own opinion. This can quite simply be, I found the writer's use of personification very effective within conveying whatever it is that the question is asking. It's really important that you do offer your own opinion. It could be, I found this metaphor effective because, or I found the writer's use of personification intriguing because, and it's really just explaining why you found the poetic techniques so interesting. Your introduction should also rephrase and answer the question and then offer the 3 main points of it. Really important, you rephrase a question and try to answer it in your introduction. You then say the 3 main points that you're going to say in the rest of your essay. Again, there's praises and screencasts on critical essay writing, so make sure that you have a look at them just to refresh your memory if you're unsure. Remember also in the introduction, you should mention any poetic or literary features, poetic techniques, and the theme that's used throughout the text. Always mention the theme. Make sure that the writer knows, or sorry, the examiner knows that you understand what this text is about. And finally, embedding quotes. You all need to improve embedding your quotes. I'll explain that in a bit. Common spelling mistakes. Please take a note of these. Pause the screencast, take a note and learn them. I've put imagine twice because it's super important that you learn to spell it, because so many of you spell it badly. It's also important not to overuse the word imagine. Some of you use the word imagine 2 or 3 times in a paragraph. It's too many times. Vary your word choice. You must be doing that. Please make sure that you copy these down and make sure you don't make the mistakes again. With and which, for example, where and where. Remember, where, as in donde, is W-H-E-R-E. Where, meaning as in the past tense, is W-E-R-E. Please make sure you know how to spell all these words, especially technique and image and imagine, and rhetorical as well. All the words. Okay, commonly confused words. Again, please pause the screencast here and take notes of these if you know that you make mistakes. Now, I know some of the Spanish isn't perfect in it, but if you know that you get these mixed up, please make sure that you make notes of them and you learn them. So nothing and anything. I haven't done anything wrong versus I've done nothing wrong. No one and nobody, nadie, pretty much mean the same thing. Anyone, here we go. Cualquiera, good Spanish, Mr. Gibb. And nadie is anyone wanting to come to the park and so on. Okay, we've also got being and been. Don't get them mixed up. Being is the state. This is a state, whereas been means that you've been somewhere else. So please make sure that you've got these ones correctly worked out as well. If you've got any questions, come and ask me. In and on get constantly mixed up. Please make sure you don't mix them up anymore. You know how to use them in Spanish. Just use them similarly in English. And fell and feel, it's just a brain thing because it's got a double L and you get them confused with a double E, meaning feel. Feel is a feeling, fell is a past tense of to fall. And also shoot's a present tense and shot is a past tense. Okay, make sure you use the writer's full name. So for example, Wilfred Owen, early on in your introduction, it should really be one of the first things that you write. Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen, and so on. After this, don't call him Wilfred, or don't call him Wilfred Owen again. Simply call him, refer to him as a second name Owen, and this is for all writers. You can also use the name, the word the poet, or the author, or the writer, or the pronoun he. Make sure that you vary your word choice to get your reader interested. And if you're adding more information to a point in a new sentence, make sure that you start it he or she also, instead of just starting it with also. That's not a complete sentence. When you're quoting more than one line of poetry, separate them with a slash and take a new line. So for example here, what passing bells for those who die as cattle, then you see the slash. Only the monstrous anger of the guns. And this here just lets the reader know exactly that the lines of poetry are on different lines. Otherwise, you might look at this and think, is it 4 lines? Has the poet purposely written it like this? What's going on? Whereas with the slash, you know that it's 2 full lines. Again, try to stop using like so much. It's a really overused word. Try the words as if instead. Quite simply, it sounds more mature and more formal. So instead of saying it was like the men were animals ready for slaughter, you could say it was as if the men were animals ready for slaughter. Okay, finally, always put the title of the text in inverted commas and capital letters. Capital A for capital D, doomed, and capital Y, youth. And notice the inverted commas there by Wilfred Owen. Make sure that you put capital letters for all the main words in a title. Smaller words like a, an, the, of, and everything, for, and everything like that, you don't have to capitalize. If it's more than 4 letters, stick a capital letter on it, and always make sure the title's in inverted commas. When you're analysing, mention the technique and then explain the denotation, primary connotation, and secondary connotation of it, thinking about the analysis pyramid. Finally, embedding quotes. Everyone can improve on this. Stop saying a quote which shows this is what passing bells for these who die as cattle. Instead, change that. Embed it into your writing. Make it sound more natural. Just simply saying your point and then always saying a quote which shows this is, it's really boring to read. So instead, you can embed it. For example, this is further explored when the writer asks what passing bells for these who die as cattle, as he describes them as cattle. And notice how I've inserted the word in speech marks there from the quote into my narrative. Again, it reads more mature and it allows your essay to flow, and it will help you get marks for your structure. Okay, so just all you need to do is obviously make sure that you understand everything in here. If you don't, obviously ask me in class or break or lunchtime, and make sure that you don't make the same errors again in your next essay. It's absolutely fine to make errors. It's brilliant that you make errors, but you do have to also make sure that you learn from them and that you improve every time.